Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the renovation roadmaps, transforming Euro's building landscape to leave no one behind. I hope everybody can hear me and everybody's on board. Everybody has a coffee on their tables or is already awake. And today we're gonna have a very good speakers consortiums from different projects, from EU projects, which is Green Home, IBRO TPC, Renocali, and Renoverty. And Roberta, if you may go back just 1 second, we have also some rules for the webinars, of course, as in every webinar. Please make sure your microphone is muted. You can also use the chat function to ask questions or to raise your hand to be unmuted. For verbal questions, we would really like you to ask several questions during today's webinar. And for technical support, my dear colleague Roberta here from IECP will also help and assist for technicalities. Just a note, everything what you are hearing today is recorded and will be also made available for you within the next weeks. So all the slides, all the presentations, and of course the webinar itself. So I hope we will have a good and great informative session today. My name is Christina Eisfeld, and I welcome you today. I'm going to give you a short presentation as well in the beginning. Yes, thank you, Roberta, for getting to the new slide. Then we're gonna hear the first project, which is the IB Road to EPC. It is based on the first project, IB Road. So this is the follow-up project, and Emily Banker from BPIE is going to present the missing link between EPCs and the renovation passport. Then we're gonna move on to understand also a little bit the municipality's role in the building renovation passports presented by Rutger Brouwer and Livinia Andrei from the Renocali project. And we're gonna move then on to the Renoverty project, where Lydia Civic from Focus will present you the renovation roadmaps for tackling energy poverty, specifically targeting rural areas. And then Nicolas Stancios from Funding for Future is going to present the Green Home project and will follow up on the citizen roadmap. So he's going to follow up on the money focus and the financial aspects, basically. And then we're gonna have a discussion round and some conclusions. And let's see, we're gonna maybe even finish up earlier today. I hope everybody is fine with that agenda, and without further ado, I would like to share screen my presentation. 1 second for that. Let me see if it is working. Okay, you should be able to see the presentation right now. Is that correct? You can all see? Yes. So I'm going to give you a short update also on the EPBD and everything connected to building renovation passports and also the focus on energy poverty. So basically, as you know, the EPBD aims to significantly reduce the carbon footprint of the building stock because the carbon emissions there are quite heavy, as around 75% of European buildings are currently not meeting the energy efficiency requirements. And as you also know, the renovation rate in the EU is quite stuck on the low levels, between 0.8 and 1.5%, but we need to accelerate this to 2 to 3% per year. So we know there are many hurdles, and we will discuss also some of these hurdles today, starting from the financial aspects, the missing subsidies. Also in some regions we have the craftsman shortage and also the lack of motivation, of course. And we're gonna delve in them today. So just to recap what has been going on. So finally we have a deal on the EPBD. Took quite a long year, especially the trilogues. And we can see here just a short outline. It started all in December 2021 with the first proposal from the Commission for the EPBD recast, and then finally in March we had the approval in the Parliament, and then just in April on the 12th we had the approval by the Council. Now it's also officially in the Journal of the EU since the 8th of May of this month. And now the national member states of the EU have time until mid-26 to transpose the EPBD into the national governments. And then we can already see and know, of course, the zero emission buildings is the final goal. So this is set out in the EPBD as like the one missing guideline, I would say. So the recast has some areas that you can see here. So first of all, the renovation, then the information, funding, and the national bans, but also the whole big aspect on the decarbonization, and then also the modernization and system integration. Today, we're going to focus specifically on these aspects of the minimum energy efficiency requirements, the national building renovation plans, the core of this webinar. Then the energy performance certificates, we will also delve into them. Also the sustainable finance and the fighting, of course, of energy poverty, and some one-stop shop solutions as some focus areas. And then, of course, on the decarbonization part, it's the introduction of the zero emission buildings as a new standard for new buildings. Also, the BPIE provided a very good overview of all the articles, and here I underlined them for you, which we'll have in mind today. So, starting with some key results of the EPBD, of the new EPBD. So there will be no individual renovation obligations for residential buildings, first of all, but rather general requirements for reducing energy consumption across the entire residential building stock. So the renovation obligations are only planned for the non-residential buildings that are worse in terms of energy efficiency. And new buildings are to be gradually implemented to zero emission buildings in the EU member states. This means that the buildings must not produce on-site carbon emissions through the consumption of fossil fuels. And also, in addition, the buildings should be able to adjust their consumption and production, and also the storage of energy if necessary. And from 2028, you can see here on the slide, this will be implemented for new publicly owned buildings, and from January also for in January 2030 for all new buildings. And there will be a uniform class designation for the energy certificates starting in 2026 from A, so meaning zero emissions, to G, the worst, instead of uniform energy certificates. So what is actually a zero emission building? Let's clear that up. So a zero emission building is defined in terms of energy demand as a building with a very high energy performance in accordance with Annex 1 in the EPBD, requiring zero or very low amount of energy. And it's a national responsibility to set these thresholds for the maximum zero emission building. And which buildings must be zero emission buildings? So here we can see from the 1st of 2028, it's newly constructed buildings owned by public bodies and institutions. Then from 2030, all new constructed buildings must be zero emission buildings. And then also the ones for the deep renovations or undergoing deep renovations. And the final goal is, of course, 2050, that all all existing building stock must be zero emissions buildings. And also we have the definition of the nearly zero emission buildings, which is basically almost the same, but has two slight differences in their definition. It means that a building that has a very high energy performance, while the nearly zero, a very low amount of energy required, should be covered to a very significant extent by energy from renewable sources. This is the extra add-on, and including energy from renewable sources produced on-site or nearby. Okay, let's take a look at Article 9, which is one of the cores in the trajectory for the residential building stock. So the directive sets actually for the first time a quantitative target for the renovation of the residential building stock at the national level. And member states must ensure that at least, here you can see it, 55% of the overall decrease in average primary energy use is achieved through renovating the worst performing buildings. This specifically applies to the worst performing residential buildings defined as the bottom 43, here you can see it, 43 of the residential building stock within the worst performing buildings. And also it has, or it allows also to count the energy savings from renovating residential buildings affected by natural disasters. And natural disasters is also outlined and defined in the EPBD, which is buildings affected like by earthquakes and also floods. And member states define actually their own path to reduce this average primary energy use. And they have to submit it in their national building renovation plan to the Commission every 5 years using the template provided in the EPBD, it's an Annex 2, to reduce the average primary energy use by at least 16%. Here you can see that by 2030 and between 20% and 22% by 2023. 2023, yes. And there's also the outline in this article that the social impacts, including particularly the most important is the vulnerable households, should be monitored as well. Okay, so some of you are maybe familiar, but maybe there's also some confusion about it. So we have different vocabulary. So we have the building passport. There's also the roadmap. What are the energy performance certificates? And also there's the logbook. Let's tidy up this vocabulary maybe a little bit. So the renovation passport, according to Article 2 in the PPD, means a tailored roadmap for the deep renovation of a specific building in a maximum number of steps that will significantly improve its energy performance. So it's also outlined in the template what exactly should be included, and we will hear that also later in the presentation. So basically you can find all the details on the renovation passport in the annex in part 7. So actually it said it is a roadmap, but what is actually a roadmap? I took one from Germany, which is the ESFP. This could be one of the examples of a roadmap. So starting with the status quo of the building in the beginning, it's a visual outline with several renovation steps. Also on the bottom, the horizontal line also outlines the timeline until when the renovation steps have to be fulfilled and what kind of triggers there are. And for instance, that kids moving out, but also other triggers I will show you in the next slide. And of course, this has to be adjusted here because it's an old example, but the end goal should be a zero emission building by 2050, and in some national contexts, of course, also earlier. So this could be it. For instance, the first one is you have cold feet, you have a high energy bill and an old heater. Then the first measurement would be maybe, for instance, low-hanging fruits and like a first cheap measurement to start with. Then you can include some solar panels, then some e-charging stations, then also maybe a rooftop extension because there might be grandchildren. And then the battery could be like the cherry on the top on the last step. Okay. What, in contrast to this, is the energy performance certificate. It's outlined in Article 19. It means a certificate recognized by a member state or by a legal person designated by it, which indicates the energy performance of a building or a building unit. You can find all the specificities in Annex 5 and the EPBD for that. Let's dive in again a little bit into the different minimum energy performance standards. So you can see here, according to the amendment, the overall energy efficiency specified in the certificates must be expressed by a numerical indicator, so by primary energy consumption, and also contain these categories A to G. And these categories stands for, of course, the A is the zero emission building, and the G is the worst or very worst performing buildings. And then you have in between B and F, there the member states should ensure that an appropriate distribution of energy performance indicators among B and F classes is given. And also important to say that from 26, there will be this rescaling process on the energy certificates, but there are also some exemptions. You can take a look in that in the appropriate article. And there is another important aspect, which is the national databases for the building energy performance, which says that every member state should create a national database. And it includes data from, for instance, the energy performance certificates, but also from inspections, renovation passports, or smart readiness indicators, and so on. And I forgot to mention that there is also, in addition to that A to G class, and also A plus class that is introduced for whose maximum threshold may be 20% lower than that of a zero emission building, and for buildings that generate more renewable energy on site that corresponds to their annual primary energy requirements. Okay, last but not least, we have also the digital logbook. So yeah, I give you the example of the Woning Pass, which is a digital dashboard. It's quite long, as you see the definition. But for the purpose of ensuring, of course, the coherence and consistency of information, member states should ensure that the national database, which I just mentioned for the energy performance of buildings, is interoperable and integrated with other administrative databases. Basically, as you can see, I found this in the digital building logbook study from last year. It's a common repository, sorry, for all building related data. So in the EPBD, it's outlined in the Article 22, basically that it can be a digital logbook, which is this common repository for all building related data, and considering all these elements you can see here. And last point, of course, the focus on energy poverty, which is outlined also in Article 17. So we know that inefficient buildings are often linked to energy poverty and social problems, and vulnerable households are particularly exposed to increasing energy prices as they spend larger proportion of their budget on energy products and services. And by reducing, of course, the energy bills, building renovations can lift people out of energy poverty and can also prevent and reduce also negative health outcomes. And in fact, as buildings are responsible of half the particulate matter emissions in the EU and cause, of course, premature death and illness. This is also actually outlined in the EPBD. And therefore, the energy performance of buildings can and should also reduce the pollutant emissions at the same time. So important to say is that the EPBD outlines these social safeguards, and they're the core or one of the foundations of the EPBD, and it outlines that the focus should be on vulnerable households, including the ones who are living in the social housing, especially also focuses on tenants and also on private owners. And there should be national funding programs available to vulnerable households that address also the barriers of upfront costs for renovations. We know that there are some subsidies available, but especially for energy poor, it's really hard to have these upfront costs covered. And also outlined are the prevention of renovations, according to Grossman. I used here the term. It's not outlined in the EPBD, but I think it's very accurate. So these also focus on rent support member states can impose cans on rent increases and also incentivize some financial schemes that tackle these upfront costs. And it's outlined also to provide some on-bill schemes and also pay-as-you-save schemes and energy performance contracting. Also in the next article, in Article 18, energy poverty is outlined in connection to one-stop shops. And actually it's quite a focus, and it's also a new article which was not there before. So it gives one-stop shops really a prominent role as providing key information and advisory tools for the renovation. And it's very specific, so there should be a minimum of one-stop shop per 80,000 inhabitants per region, and the average age of the building stock is above the national average, so old buildings, and in areas where member states intend to implement integrated district renovation programs, or in a location that can be reached within 90 minutes of average time on the basis of the means of transportation that is locally available. And here also the target audience is public actors, private actors, so homeowners and households, and also private entities, so meaning financial and economic organizations, also including small, medium enterprises. And of course, we're talking here also about energy poverty. A particular focus should be given through dedicated services to provide holistic support to people affected by energy poverty and vulnerable and low-income households living in worst-performing buildings. And I won't go in too much into depth into it. So there's also the solar mandate, and the most important aspect is for us to see at the end, so December 2029. So the solar mandate is also for new residential buildings and new covered parking spaces. And that would be my short presentation for now. And I would like now to introduce to you Emily, who would continue with some outcomes of the IB Road to EPC project. We're very keen because I think it ends by end of May soon, and we will have a good look around all the project final results. Emily, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. So actually, I won't only talk about the results. Actually, that is only 1/3. I think at the moment we are finalizing the project, as you've said. Do you see the screen, right? That's all good. Or do you see your little window? Okay, good. We are finalizing the project, and we are working also a little bit on more the policy side of it. Like we're writing currently an EU roadmap on, how are the outcomes of this project actually now relevant for the implementation of the EPBD that you presented so nicely now. And that's also part of what I want to focus on today. So yeah, the missing link between EPCs and renovation. Let's move forward. So what would I like you to take away today? So basically the concept, I think some of you might be familiar, but just to go over the added value again, I think especially because we have many projects here, it's great to then have a little comparison. How can we puzzle it together? Kind of the application, now that we have the EPBD recast, for member states to implement the recast, what is the role of IB Road to EPC, and how can this process be speed up through the lessons we've learned? And in the end, I have one example from Portugal on the integration, what happened there. So let's get started. We are already late on time. So just a reminder, like many of you who will be in this building space will maybe remember that there was a project called IB Road, which kind of developed a building renovation. And then basically back then it wasn't clear that the EPBD would be recasted. So it was kind of a question like, okay, how can we bring this renovation passport into the world more? How about we attach it to EPCs? Because EPCs, many countries already have EPCs. So what would be if we would integrate those two? And so this is how the project started. With six consortium implementing countries in Spain, Portugal, Poland, Greece, Romania, and Bulgaria. And yeah, what is the general objective? So basically, it's kind of a new kind of EPC, of course, and the focus is really on this integration of the building renovation passport. But at the same time, the whole tool is, how we will see, very versatile and can be adapted to member states' needs, which is also what we saw now in the field testing results. That is very useful. And also the scope. Like, there's always a question like, okay, so you design a tool like this, but for what kind of buildings can it work? Is there maybe differences? So I'm not entirely sure how familiar you are, so I will just quickly go over this. Basically, what we tried to do in the project was really like, okay, so merging the EPCs with the BRPs, how is this even possible? Is this possible? Like, how could this be done in these countries? Kind of how can IB Road, this original thing, be adapted to maybe be like we have a bigger scope in terms of buildings, and then you kind of test and evaluate the applicability. And in the end, it's about, okay, so how can we facilitate the adaptation, which is where we are now, which is also why I want to talk about policy a bit. One really important element, and to be honest, as when I started the project, for me, the most interesting thing was the IB Road GPC Assistant. It's basically a tool, an online platform that looks a little bit like this. So this would be a screenshot. And this would be also the outcome of basically how a renovation passport, if you use the new EU language, could look like. It's at the moment, the way the project is now, it would be basically you would have your EPC, your document, and in the end you would have a QR code that leads you to the site where you get this kind of screenshot here. And what it really shows you is it has like a step-by-step approach. So for example, here we see now it's 2022, we are at class G. And then step 1 is, okay, you should do your facade. And maybe a window, and then step 3 is this, and it kind of says the timing, it says what exactly you're doing, it says the specific technicality, so you can't see it on the screen, but you can click on it, and then it says exactly what you should do. And I think what this shows is, so the way it's designed, it can be connected to EPC databases. Is really something that can take data from another source, and then the output can also be taken into another source. So it's really something that is designed to be integrated according to member states' needs. What is also interesting here is we see the kind of the dates. So we heard from you, Christina, just like, like there's all these EPBD requirements. By this year, you need to have a ZEB. By this year, you need this. We have maps for non-residential buildings, etc. So what this assistant also does, it has all these input levels that will be matched with the National Building Renovation Plan, so the old, like the new version of the LTRS, the long-term renovation strategies, and then it will basically align this. So it could also take in a maps and be like, okay, by this year you need to achieve this level, and so it would consider this. And I think this is what is great about it. This is kind of how it would look on the phone. So yeah, you just get an idea. Then the modular approach, and I'm spending so much time on this because I think it's really what shows how this tool could be really ready for member states to implement. And we saw in different countries that different countries prefer different tools. So basically, different modules here. So basically, we have the basic module, which is a little bit what you've seen now, and then member states could kind of adapt other models based on what they're doing. So for example, there's the indoor air quality module, the cost module, which would be more about also integrating financial information. Where's the grant? I don't know. The SRI module, which is the smart readiness indicator, energy demand model, etc. And the thing is that they can, and this was also, we did a re-evaluation with the whole consortium. This is really something that people from the country said, that the great thing about this thing is that you can add additional modules. So for example, if you think of global warming potential that is now in the EPBD, we call it whole life carbon, you could call it whatever, but like you could add that as a module. Or I mean, there's so many other things. So, for example, in the requirements for the BRP, for the renovation passports, there's something on technical safety for materials, which is not yet part of the IB Road GPC as it's designed, but it could be a potential additional module. So member states within this kind of like completely attaching it to the EPC or making it something else can kind of choose where to be. So on the scale that you're seeing on the screen now, either it's something that is kind of integrated, it's maybe not so expensive because, you do a lot of EPCs. So if every time we do a BRP with this, or it's an option, it might be quite expensive. So this needs to be cheap, or you do something more on the other side where it's kind of more of a separate thing, but you really go in depth, like have this on-site visit, you do complete, well, really good assessment, which then means it's more expensive. So member states could decide how to implement this. So we have the EPBD. I will not go through this because I think you covered this quite well, Christina. We have these new definitions. The renovation passport definitions, of course, super welcome, and it's kind of nice in the project. We were really like, yay, we did all these things not knowing what the recast would look like. And in the end, actually, it matches super well. And IBRO GPC is actually a renovation passport ready to be implemented. And I think this is kind of what I would also like you to take away from today, from everything I say. Because if you look at so this is just the recital, of course, which is more to show, like in case of doubt, how to implement it. But yeah, it really shows, okay, hey, there's these synergies, and we want to allow these to be drawn up jointly. And in this case, the renovation passport would substitute the recommendations, which is actually what in the assistant you maybe didn't really see, but in the end, this is what's there. Like for each step, there's recommendations, but more in depth, like the EPC we know now. What I just wanted to highlight here for renovation passports is on the good to know section. So for example, the scheme will be voluntarily used by building owners, unless member states decide to make it mandatory. And actually, from the field testing, for example, in Portugal as well, it was like, no, let's not make it mandatory. Like they actually found that it was good to use it voluntary. Then they can be joined up with the energy performance certificate. This is exactly the idea. Then the member states need to ensure that the renovation passport can be uploaded to the national database. And this is again where the assistant comes in, that is already designed to actually do this, to be, to be maybe then integrate this outcome into the digital building logbook, etc. The last one, basically provide a dedicated digital tool for preparing, potentially updating renovation passport. Again, the assistant is already there. And what I wanted to show you is that there's this Annex 3 with the EPBD, in the EPBD for the requirements for the renovation passport. And this is just a screenshot from the report that we're writing at the moment. Is just to show you that basically we made a list of all the requirements, and then we assessed to what extent IBRO GPC already does that. And now you see in the green, because it was the beginning of the table, there's also two sections where it's kind of red, which is, for example, this technical and safety requirements for materials that I mentioned. And there's other things like something on the payback period for step-by-step renovation, where IBRO GPC doesn't necessarily mention this, but it can be integrated in existing or new modules. So if you're more interested in this, you can watch out for the roadmap that we will be publishing. Here for the National Building Renovation Map, it's also that kind of, this is kind of like, is a bit the same. So they have all these requirements, and actually, again, the recommendations, because they are attached to the targets, or like because the, what we will find in terms of targets in policy, or that the member states will decide in terms of policy, will be integrated in this assistant. So then the recommendations will already consider, okay, this is the what we want to achieve in terms of these kind of type of buildings, etc. Sorry, now I'm rushing a bit because I'm aware we are like running out of time. For maps, maybe important to say that through the integration of different data flows with IBRO GPC, you can just support kind of finding, okay, we have the worst performing buildings, and then if we have a scaled out kind of renovation passport in that is attached to the EPC, could be how we suggested here, it can help with the renovation of worst performing building stock. And kind of, yeah, I think way too much text. Okay. Basically, again, taking away that that it has a certain flexibility, it has a modular approach, it can be complementing the EPC. I want to skip to the actual Portugal, so have take at least 2 minutes on this. But we are now in phase of transposition. So 29th of May 2026, member states need to have transposed the EPBD. The national building renovation plans need to be submitted a half a year before, and already 1 year before in 2025, they will need to have the kind of national trajectory for residential buildings. So this is something that under the kind of Article 9, I guess, as well, or one after, will be mandatory to do this trajectory until 2050 instead of maps, you could say. And part of that is then, yeah, this is also something that will be relevant then for the kind of renovation passport, because the recommendations will depend on that. So, yeah. So the action points are kind of one thing I wanted to mention that I forgot is on-site visits is something that is kind of envisioned as mandatory. We saw this is also, it's kind of expensive, but it's also, you know, one of the success factors. This is what makes the quality higher. And in the EPBD, it says like you should do on-site visits, but you know, if necessary, you can do virtual. And I think this is a bit of a shame because we need to really make sure that for this to work, it should be on-site visits. Okay, so example Portugal. For me, the big question was always like, okay, so how can this work with an existing policy framework? And actually, Portugal, Romania, Spain, one other country, they already mentioned building renovation passports. So this is how we call it in our project, in their long-term renovation strategy. So this is actually something, this has already started, this idea of bringing those two together. So EPCs have changed in Portugal, so we have this legislative framework that we're now trying to attach this renovation passport to. We call them BRPs. This is why I see it on the slide. So this is the sentence from the LTRS. This is the plan creation of a building renovation passport. And they have been quite good. They've been said, okay, no, we really want this close to the EPC. We don't want this as a standalone thing. We want to integrate this. So it's really kind of the vision that we had. They looked at different modules that work for them. So basically this kind of presentation we have for each of the countries. And they were like, okay, so all these modules work for us. For other countries, the modules were completely different. And I think what is now interesting is this kind of link to other modules. So for example, so they have Casa A Plus. This is their one-stop shop. Anyone from here from Portugal can even tell us more about it afterwards. But I guess I will show you the pictures that I thought were really cool. So basically they have yes, this online one-stop shop. And the question was a little bit like, okay, how can IBRO GPC come in here, especially connecting it to this financial information. So here's a grant that you can do, or like maybe the thing that is still missing is kind of like who pays for an EPC. You could say a more awesome EPC with the renovation passport that is more expensive. And yeah. Yeah, so this is Adena is the energy agency from Portugal. And they were like kind of playing around with, okay, could this be like a renovation passport module? Like, so they're still discussing, but they are quite far, as in they really think about already how to integrate it. And lessons learned in general were just that, so what they found was that experts needed kind of 140% more time. And these on-site visits in the beginning were, of course, a bit like, oh, not so efficient, but became more efficient with practice. And actually, they found that the calculation of renovation steps is less time intensive than the one of DPC. In terms of suitability, and I think this might be interesting for your projects, I'm not sure what you focus on, I'd be interested to hear, is that it's most suitable for multifamily houses and office buildings. I don't actually know why. This is actually something I should find out again. But yeah, this was just from the survey after the field test. And the last one is how much money would the respondents spend on IBRO GPC, because it's a nice vision, it's nice and great, but if nobody wants to pay for it, of course it won't work. And actually, yeah, around 1.5, a bit more than 1.5 is in both building owners and experts were thinking this would be all right if it would be that expensive. So this would be interesting for member states as they implement it to be like, okay, so we should keep this in mind in terms of making it feasible, in terms of designing our financial incentive programs, etc. Okay, this was something else. Good. Sorry, I think I went 2-3 minutes over time.
No, perfect, Emily. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Great. Maybe somebody has ad hoc questions. Emily, please raise your hand. Maybe I have 1-2 questions ad hoc. Well, so the EPCs in some countries are available, but in some countries not, right? So the database is really fragmented.
Yeah.
It's a problem, right? Can you maybe?
Yeah, we saw in Poland, I think it was, there's not really an EPC database as maybe in Portugal. And the theaters, it showed that this was really a challenge, and like, because how do you start if there's not the database in the first place? But I guess yeah, like in my view, it just shows the urgency of doing something, right? Like I guess it's now under the EPBD because anyway they have to redo the whole EPC thing in some way. We have these kind of A to G that are now need to be adjusted. There's also Estonia, I think, also don't really have a lot of EPCs, even though they're super good in terms of also digital stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is not really an IBRO-TPC problem in a way. This is the more general problem, but I guess you could still have a renovation passport, and just gradually grow it also with the digital building logbook, etc. I don't really know how to solve this. It's a lot of capacity training as well. And I think the EPBD now does focus more also on training. Like you said, the one-stop shop is not only for people. So I guess I'm hoping that as we also educate public authorities, it will gradually all fall a little bit into place, but I'm also maybe a bit naive and optimistic.
Yeah. And another thing, I'm a little bit I'm a little bit cautious because I know for sure in Germany with the ESFP, there is a bit of a quality insurance problem. So the quality of the renovation roadmaps is really different, and how to ensure they have like a really good, like how do we ensure that the consultants are doing a good job? Can you envision that? Because
Yeah.
I mean, also the feasibility and the practicality of the produced outcomes of the renovation roadmaps is sometimes very diverse, in terms of the people who want to use it. I'm thinking about like the consultants saying, okay, you have to put, if you want to have in the cellar it more hot, you have to have like 11 centimeters of a insulation, but then you cannot stand, like really practical stuff. How to ensure that they're have a high quality.
I guess like there's different reasons why I hate myself. There's different reasons why the quality is bad, right? So this is one thing of maybe people they're not trained enough, or like to have maybe a suggestion that works that is not being able to stand. But also in the case of Greece, for example, the EPCs are so cheap and energy auditors just don't get paid enough. And I think this is just more of a structural thing that now we have the opportunity to revise a little bit. That then is also like, if you want quality, you just need to pay your energy auditors also a good salary, or like a good yeah. And I think this is something where maybe, I don't know, Nicholas was going to speak about finance a bit more, if that's maybe something that can be rethought in that regard, like how do we ensure we actually have funds to pay for a higher quality EPC. And also there was something in the project that we discussed on measured energy performance indicators. So could we, because a lot of EPC outcome is based on model data, could we maybe replace some of that with more measured data, which also makes it more expensive? But actually in the end, I think people were not so fond of it. It makes it very hard to compare, etc. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm answering your question. It's a very good question.
You are. Okay. Somebody else has maybe another question? We have time a little bit for that.
Please, I actually see a question from Diana.
Diana, please. You unmute yourself. Is it possible?
Yes,
Oh, yes, now it's possible. Thank you so much. I just had to be a bit patient. It didn't work before. Yes, and maybe following up on the question, Christina, you had. Emily, could you give maybe more practical, insights on how you actually really define the measures of the specific roadmaps? So sometimes it's hard to define where to start. So how does your tool, or like what are other ways, to define where actually, what measures we should implement kind of first? And the question also should be like how you envision to be homeowners and other renters of the buildings to be involved in defining actually, the roadmap. So deciding together, where to start first and having kind of a common understanding where the specific needs to move in the end towards a carbon neutral building. Thank you.
The second question might also Nicholas step in afterwards when he presented, but go on, Emily.
I think, yeah, so you're asking basically how do actually come to ideas for measures that work well, that, in this case also don't mean you have to consent anymore. So in the basic module of IBROTPC, it's basically this question of, what are we doing? Like, when are we doing it? And then how are we doing it? So the how would be now what you refer to. And so the technical specifications of the renovation measures that are proposed by IBROTPC are basically derived from the National Building Strategy. So this is, yeah, I guess, so this is of how far we thought it, I guess, initially to take as much as possible from the national energy and climate plans, from the national building renovation roadmaps, and then also, yeah, through this training. So basically, we have several trainings that we developed for construction professionals. So I spoke before about training of public authorities, but we also have developed training materials for construction professionals. Like, if I went through the presentations to understand a bit better, I don't have an engineering background anymore, but it's basically part of the vision to train them to then basically have better recommendations. And the question is a little bit, how do you roll out construction professional training? So for example, in Greece, I think they were thinking about, could it be attached to university programs? But it was a bit outside the scope of the project, but I think it's a really good thing to follow up on in the terms of exploitation, dissemination afterwards, to really be like, okay, we can't forget that construction professionals also need to be trained to do deep renovation. It's a general European thing. It's not only an IBRO-TPC thing. But I guess I can just tell you that we developed some material for that. And for the second question, I'm happy for Nicholas to answer it. I felt like this project was quite technical. I joined later. I wasn't so involved in how they spoke to people actually on the ground. We saw in other projects that it's of course more an issue, but yeah, I think I'll let Nicholas reply.
Nicholas, do you want to reply now? Can you unmute yourself, or should we continue later on? Well, in Green Home, definitely the homeowner associations and the building managers are the ones who are also saying, and the owners were saying a lot that individual desires should be reflected in the renovation roadmaps. So this came out in the survey. For instance, if owners want to have also, if there's like a multifamily building with a lot of elderly people and they wished also to have an elevator, for instance, to be included, so, such aspects are important or have been featured a lot. Or if they can also agree on a design, to have saying in the decisions what are drawn in the roadmap. That was one outcome of the survey. Nicholas, maybe, or we just move on later.
No.
That question?
I don't really. I just feel that the roadmaps are a function both of what people can pay, the tenor in which they can pay this, and it should be as much as possible combining. Maybe I'd expand more when I talk about follow the money. That's why I say follow the money. I think Emily brought up the point about quality, and the fact is most renovations are not the quality they need to be because people are cutting corners, either cutting corners because they're promising more than what they really are going to deliver, or because owners simply say, well, I really don't need that corner, because they don't understand the long-term effect on their building. So what we really need is we need, companies need to make money. They have overheads, they have lawyers to pay, and if they're not going to be paid. So I think there's an urgency to really shift how we think about these renovations. There's an urgency for the companies to change their business models. Low-hanging fruits is the game still today. You mentioned the low percentage rate at the very beginning. We're nowhere near the renovation rate we need. And with these roadmaps, maximum number of steps. Well, I can make maximum number of steps. And I don't think that's going to be to the benefit of the owners. I think that'll be the benefit to companies. So I think there's a number of things that are still not clearly enough understood by our policymakers and most of all by our citizens. I love the idea of the logbook. I really like the combination of the EPC that you guys have done in your project. And in fact, I'd like to talk to you about it because we have platform for existing buildings, which could use some of your knowledge, I think. But I feel that there isn't enough stress on how urgent it is to see all of these ideas actually implemented and working. Yeah, so.
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. Diana, I hope that answers also your question. And we're going to move on in looking at the time. So I would like to give the floor to Rutger Proor from DKI, and also Lavinia André from who is the president of Terra Millennium Free Foundation. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Lavinia. Okay, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. I hope everyone can hear me and now can also see me. Good morning still. My name is Rutger Proor. I work for the Building Performance Institute Europe in Berlin, and today I have the honor to be in a very knowledgeable community talking about renovation passports. Today I specifically represent the Renovation project. And in Renovation, we focus on building renovation passports and supporting local authorities, and specifically how building renovation passports are tools that have the potential to support local authorities in financial planning. So how do we do this? We focus specifically on capacity building among municipalities in Slovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria. And the focus of the capacity building is on the first place to develop building renovation passports. And secondly, linking that to getting access to financing for renovations, because these are two aspects that are challenging for municipalities in our focus countries, but also broader in Europe. Which measures to take, which also featured in the question we just discussed, but also when you know what measures to take, how do you get money to actually implement them? So the methods we apply are, among others, training for energy auditors to use a tool. It's actually the tool developed in IB Road, the project that Emily just presented, and to use this IB Road tool to generate building renovation passports for public buildings. So we are generating and developing building renovation passports for 20 public buildings for municipalities to get a chance to practice and to see how it works, what documents you need, what are challenges on the way, really building capacity. And besides that, we're also organizing financing workshops to really talk about how, if you know what measures to take, how do you get money for it? And that all we also focus on international expert exchange, of which today is a great opportunity for us to engage with everyone. So our project still lasts until January next year. And if you want more information, you can look on our website. We just published a guidebook on the EPBD and EED, basically EU policies relevant for local authorities. There's quite a lot of information in there that has already been discussed by both Christina and Emily, so I'll not go into much detail. I just want to highlight for people that are interested, our guidebook is out there. If you work with local authorities, have a look at it. It spells out all the different aspects of the EPBD and specifically looks at what does that mean for local authorities. Besides, it also gives examples of building renovation passports. It compares best practice examples, and it also tackles questions like the ones that were raised in the chat. So this slide has a brief repetition, but I still want to present it because it's very important for what comes next. So we already talked about the fact that building renovation passports are included in the EPBD. And I think one thing that is very important here is the benefits, the potential benefits of building renovation passports. And that's mainly to avoid expensive mistakes and lock-ins. So it partially relates to the question that was just put in the chat. Why and how do you select the measures that you're taking? So one of the ideal case scenarios is that the consultant goes to a house and looks at the situation, talks to the homeowner, understands, okay, this is roughly the budget that they have. And first, it's very important, obviously, to take the right measures. So, for example, if you start insulating your walls, which wall do you start to insulate and how thick do you do the insulation? If you start off and you say, okay, we have a limited budget, so we're just going to do all sides of the house with 5 centimeters while you actually need 11. A building renovation passport could say, okay, maybe you cut it up in 2 steps. So first you do the 11 centimeter you need on the north side of the building where most heat is lost. and then you take the rest of the building. So that's an example of how you avoid a lock-in, because if you put 5 centimeters everywhere and you have later on have to do it again, this generates lots of extra costs, and it also does not generate the optimal energy savings. So that's a benefit. Another benefit is that it enables staged renovation. So basically spreading out your investment costs. Say you're a municipality in Romania, you do not have a lot of money. You want to make sure that you do not have to pay in one go all the money to get to an energy label A or a zero emission building. But rather you want to spread it out and do it in chunks that are affordable to you. Now, why is this all relevant? Because all member states in the coming 2 years have to implement voluntary building renovation passport schemes, but they can choose to make them mandatory. In other words, all member states will have to start developing some kind of system. And I think that's exactly why projects like IB Road to EPC are so relevant, because this really shows one pathway of how member states can do that. And I also believe that Emily will get many questions in the coming months and weeks about what she has done in the project with all her colleagues in the different member states. So I'll go a little bit more in detail here on what is in the EPBD in terms of what should be in these different voluntary schemes. So you see on the top side, mandatory BRP design features, and on the bottom, the optional BRP design features. So we see that in these building renovation passport schemes that have to be developed, there should be something on the current energy performance of the building. So where are we now? Then it should provide sort of a graphical roadmap with different renovation steps and provide information on policy requirements. It should explain something about the best sequencing of steps. So which measures do you take in which order? And for each step, it should describe it. It should estimate the energy savings. It should estimate also the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the savings on the energy bill. Finally, it should also say if you do this renovation measure, then you will achieve a new energy label of, well, something better. Ideally, it should also provide information on the connection to district heating and cooling, the share of individual collective generation of renewable energy. If information is available, also improving the construction product circularity and the life cycle global warming potential, and information on available funding and technical advisory services. So this is one example. If you want more details, have a look at the guidebook that I just mentioned. There it's described in more detail, but it shows that these schemes are quite comprehensive. And I think what the IB Road to EPC project does very well is that it is a modular approach, which also allows you to include optional BRP design features, which are interesting for member states that really want to make building renovation passports effective. Now, the EPBD is not the only directive that's relevant. Among others, the Energy Efficiency Directive is also, at least for public authorities, very important because it highlights the exemplary role of public authorities. They should start renovating 3% of their floor area annually, and they should achieve energy savings of 1.9% final energy every year. They have also an important role for information and awareness raising and empowering vulnerable customers. Which shows that local authorities really are essential stakeholders and players in implementing the EPBD directive and making building renovation passports successful. And lastly, there's the Repower EU plan that has been created by the European Commission after the invasion of Russia, Ukraine's invasion by Russia. And this also highlights the importance of energy efficiency in buildings. For example, it increases the ambition of energy savings. It really fosters installing heat pumps and accelerating rooftop PV. And that shows that there's different EU policies that all steer in the same direction, more renovation of buildings. And building renovation passports have the potential to be tools to make that possible. And on that note, I want to give the floor to my colleague Lavinia, who will give you an example of what a building renovation passport looks like for a public building in Romania. So Lavinia, if you are ready, give me a sign, then I can go to the next slide.
You.
Cool.
Thank you, Rutger. I will talk about the building renovation passport in Romania. We in Romania, my organization and our colleagues from IR Project, we have to do 8 building renovation passports. For the moment, we realized only 5, but the other 3 are coming very soon. And let's go to the first building. Can you move to the next one? Okay, thank you. This building is a medical center in Lipanești, a small community in Prahova. And the building was constructed in 2010. And the current energy efficiency of the building is not quite good. The energy performance certificate, that is the next slide, please. The current state of the building is C. And what we wanted to do is to see how is the roadmap to took this building from C and go to the A+. And here is the roadmap. And we decided to have like 4 steps in renovating the building and reducing the current costs of energy, and also to improve its performance to A+. And let's see the packages. The first package is referring to installation of the walls, the floor, and the ceiling of the building. And with this renovation, we can move from the grade C to B. And the next step is to replace the heating system and lighting bulbs in the building. That will help us to improve our efficiency also. In the third package, we are doing the installation of the ventilation system with energy recovery and air conditioning, and we are reaching the grade A. And in the last stage, we installed the photovoltaic panels and heat pumps, and in this way we can reach the A+, like near zero building. What are the challenges in developing BRPs? What we faced actually, the lack of expertise in the field. Even there are many auditors in Romania, the concept of BRP is not well known, and only few pilot projects were developed in Romania. Lack of an update inventory of buildings. I can say lack of inventory of buildings at the national level. At the local level, we have somehow some inventories, but not good enough. Lack of documentation for the local authorities. We faced the problem that they decided to choose a building, but they didn't have any documentation for the building, and also they do not have documentation for the installations in the buildings. If the installations, the heat system is old, they do not have the technical documentation for this. Lack of energy managers at the local administration level, and the lack of one-stop shop providing all needed information about renovation at the local level. Our recommendations for local authorities: creating a database with building stock in the municipality based on energy audits, prioritizing the buildings with high potential of energy saving, but also with a high social impact on the community, like hospitals, schools, kindergartens. Involvement of experienced energy auditors in the field of BRPs, building capacity among municipal staff, organizing training sessions for public workers and or energy auditors. Here, I could suggest that also for owners associations could be good training. Assigning a contact person with the administration to manage energy issue, taking into consideration both energy and non-energy aspects, like social aspects, for example, for renovation, taking into consideration the use of existing energy management software and platforms, sharing knowledge at regional, national level to improve national BRP schemes.
Yeah, thanks, Lavinia. Then I will wrap up. I trust there will be questions, but if people want to know more about our project or about what's in EU policies, have a look at our report. It's on our webpage, and yeah, I think the slides will be shared afterwards by the Renovation team. So on that note, thanks a lot, and we're here for answering questions.
Yes, thank you both. We received actually also a question from Marianne. So is there any guidance or consideration in the development of building renovation passports as how to integrate energy upgrades and deep renovation with repairs and cyclical maintenance? For instance, need to re-roof and replace gutters. So linked to this also improvements in climate resilience. So for instance, making gutters bigger and linking to sustainable drainage systems and flood resilient measures. So basically, is it just reliant on the expertise of the professionals involved in offering advice?
That's a very good question. I think when we look at the framework that's provided in the EPBD, because that's what we currently have, there is these mandatory aspects where I would say climate adaptation is not yet integrated in it. But there's optional features, and I think this really points to an important aspect that the EPBD it brings basically a framework, and it's up to member states to then decide whether they want to make building renovation passports to really effective, successful tools of high quality, or whether they, well, basically will cut corners and try to make it cheap. And I believe there is a real opportunity for also the expert community that we're part of to advocate at national level with national policymakers to ensure that these kind of aspects will be integrated. I hope that answers your question.
I hope, Marianne, that's answering your question. And there's another question for by Fintaza. If you can unmute yourself. Hold on. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Anna Bayomi from FEANSE, the Federation of Homeless Service Providers, and we are very happy to listen to this presentation that you just told us, because we also work with our members, homeless service providers, on how to renovate their buildings, which are usually very high energy consuming, mostly public buildings. And I would like to have a specific question on structural measures and other technical problems that can arise in a specific building, especially in older buildings, that need to be addressed before any energy efficiency measures can be implemented. And these measures can also be quite costly. And if this is considered in the building renovation passports, or this is something that should be tackled and financed before the whole energy efficiency measures are planned. I'm asking this based on some previous experiences in old buildings where maybe water pipes or the electricity system is not good, or the roof is in a very bad condition. And to repair all these problems is not an energy efficiency measure at all. but it's highly necessary and can also be very costly. So if you have any experience on this, I would be very happy to hear your input.
Thanks for the question. So if I understood the question correctly, it's, do you actually fix very urgent issues that are non-energy related before you implement energy efficiency measures? Again, I've heard that these issues occur also in different places where, I mean, if there's a leaking roof, obviously this is a priority, right? So if you have a limited budget, you will probably first want to make sure your roof stops leaking before you start insulating your walls, because if the water comes into your house, then that might have all kinds of negative consequences on health, on comfort, but also on the structure of the building. But so my take would be, if you live in such a building and your homeowner association asks for a building renovation passport, probably that's something you could integrate in the steps. So when you talk to a consultant, you could say, okay, well, for us, it's very important that we first fix the roof. But then, for example, when you fix it, and you open the roof, for example, make sure that you then put the right amount of insulation in, rather than fixing it without putting the insulation in. So I think that's an example where building renovation passports could potentially have very positive benefits, specifically because these steps are to be defined together with the building owner. So it's not sort of a preset thing. But again, this really depends on local context, on the financing capacities of the building owners, whether there's public support for that. Yeah, and I think it highlights the importance of what Emily mentioned, of on-site visits, perhaps, so that technical experts can have a look at the situation.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We will have some time also afterwards for other questions. So let me introduce now Lydia from Focus, who will delve into the Renovation project and the renovation roadmaps we are at the moment designing to tackle energy poverty in rural areas. Lydia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I'd just like to, just a second, try to share my presentation, and then we can pick up. Okay, there we go. I hope you can see it. So I'd like to discuss the renovation roadmaps which we're developing in Renovation project. The specificity of the project is that we're tackling energy poverty in rural areas, which makes this project quite different from what we've heard about today. Maybe starting with an anecdote, like our first question was, what's actually a renovation roadmap? And with my colleague who has more technical background, we had this discussion initially within Focus because we're in charge of kicking off the process of the renovation roadmaps. And his perspective was that it has to be something very similar to the building renovation passport, or maybe even closer to the renovation log. Whereas I saw it as something which is looking more at the non-technical aspects, more at how to make people affected by energy poverty aware that there needs to be an energy renovation, how to ensure that they have any financial means, and so on and so on. So after this kind of like, not exactly a fight, but kind of disagreement of what the renovation roadmap is, we took the discussion to the level of the consortium of Renovation, and actually this autonomy continued on the level of the consortium. Some partners with more technical background saw it as a mainly technical roadmap, like how to prioritize the energy efficiency measures, in what time to implement them, in what priority to implement them. And half of the consortium said, okay, we want to look at more of these non-technical aspects, like how to ensure that the multi-flat building actually goes about this renovation, including also the most vulnerable households who are not able to access funding for the renovation, and so on. So eventually we agreed that it's a combination of both approaches, both technical and non-technical. So at the moment, what we're developing is draft roadmaps, which are split into two parts. First part is the technical considerations, and here we are looking at the energy audits, which have been or are currently being wrapped up. In the project, each of the 7 pilot sites has several energy audits implemented, and these energy audits are our technical basis for creating these renovation roadmaps. Then the next thing we would like to do is set some sort of renovation objectives, some sort of expectations from the renovation, and also indicators that can tell us whether the renovation is any successful or not. The renovation objectives will be set up on the basis of results of using DREAM model. It's a model for prioritizing energy efficiency measures, which our Greek partner UPRC developed, and the simulations are at the moment being carried out, and in a few weeks we get the results of what is the best priority or priority line for the energy efficiency measures to be implemented. Then we would like to look at the plans for the renovation. So what are the stages of renovation? What are the milestones of renovation? What is the timeline of the renovation and similar? We would also like to identify the barriers and challenges that can be faced, as well as outline some of the solutions for overcoming these barriers. Finally, we would also like to look at available companies in the pilot sites, of course, not by name, but by the function that they can perform in the renovation. Then there's a set of non-technical considerations, which we would like to look at in our roadmaps. We would like to look at the key characteristics of the housing in the region, in the pilot region, of course, based on the audits that we did, so based on the technical inputs that we have, but we would like to have a look at the wider scale. We would also like to set wider scale renovation objectives, and of course also identify the barriers and challenges. Then we would like to look at how to overcome these challenges, what are the solutions. We would also like to identify what are the relevant actors and stakeholders which have to take part in the renovation process, as well as how to scale up and replicate the roadmaps, be it on the national level, be it on the European level, so in areas a little bit wider than our pilot areas. Maybe just a quick look at some of the barriers and challenges that we encountered so far. Namely, several partners already implemented workshops with the local stakeholders, with the local actors, some of them also involving people that are affected by energy poverty. And here's this lineup of the barriers and challenges we identified. So the first barrier is definitely the financing barrier, namely most of the households affected by energy poverty cannot access funds which are necessary for the renovation, either because there are no government subsidies or because the families are not considered creditworthy by the banks. Then there are a lot of community barriers presented, especially when living in a multifamily building, where part of the flats or households can afford the renovation, part of them cannot afford the renovation, and the whole community has to do these steps together. So there's a lot of networking that has to be done, community building, it has to be done. A lot of intermediaries have to be present to integrate the different interests, the different abilities of the different the households and families in a multi-family building. There's a lot of challenges around participation and representation. Namely, it's one of the characteristics of people affected by energy poverty that they do not like to be present in meetings because they feel stigmatized. So you have to represent them somehow, and then it's a question who represents them and in what manner. Ideally, of course, they're present themselves, but very often it happens also when we're organizing workshops that they simply feel too embarrassed, too disempowered to be included. There's a challenge, especially in the rural areas, that there's not enough companies which would do energy efficiency and also renewables installment. So that's something which we have to discuss how we can overcome. Then one of the barriers that renovations are not exactly popular in the rural areas because they're not promoted. There are hardly any governmental actors promoting renovation, so there's mostly word of mouth that can be used as a promotion technique. But yeah, we're exploring how to make this renovation promotion a little bit stronger. We're facing a lot of challenges with the illegally constructed buildings and also illegal connections to the grid, which it's not per se an energy efficiency measure, but we have to look into it. Also, we are looking into situations where buildings don't have, for example, basic resilience to earthquakes. They are not equipped with basic resilience to fires and so on. So it's a bunch of this non-energy related, as we discussed already, aspects. There's a number of administrative barriers. There's also high distrust in different actors. Namely, people affected by energy poverty, they tend to distrust the governmental actors. So it's very important that we work with them through actors which they trust, like, for example, centers for social work or social NGOs that they're in touch with and so on. We also have situations with protected historical buildings and also landscape regulations. There are also geographical barriers because of the remoteness of the dwellings. For example, it's problematic to get the renovation materials, like the materials for the facade, because the villages are so distant. So we are looking into how to overcome this kind of barriers. Of course, the knowledge and skills barriers are there, starting from energy illiteracy of some of the people that we are trying to work with, to the lack of qualified installers. Of course, also there's the challenge of lack of participation, lack of taking part in decision-making processes, in consultations, and so on. I think that would be it for the moment, and then yes, I can answer you some of the questions.
Great, thank you, Lydia. Maybe somebody wants to ask a question? Okay, maybe you can tell us, because it's very interesting how we approach the renovation roadmaps. Maybe you can explain the co-creation process and maybe the process and the key challenges affected by designing the renovation roadmaps. I feel like
yeah, what we're trying to do is involve like really all possible stakeholders and actors, with focus on people affected by energy poverty. So we're doing this process of 4 co-creation workshops. The first co-creation workshop ideally should be on the very local level in the pilot area where we're working, bringing together the local actors, stakeholders, also people affected by energy poverty. Then the second co-creation workshop is meant already to bring also some actors from the national level, to include also national authorities, the governmental offices, and so on. The third co-creation workshop is meant to actually already present the draft roadmap, so that all the different, both local as well as the national actors can give us feedback. And the final workshop, it's actually not so much of a workshop, it's more of a presentation of the roadmap, which is supposed to happen on national level, where we're trying to make national actors and stakeholders familiar with the process that we did and with the results of this process. And in terms of the main challenges, at the moment, I have to admit it's the main challenge to actually involve people affected by energy poverty in this process, because as I mentioned before, for them, it's all these official processes are kind of like really scary thing. They're not feeling good in being in a room with people that are more, let's say, I don't know, energy literate, more vocal, more whatever. So it's what we're trying to do now is we're trying to hold like either specific workshops which are meant only for people affected by energy poverty, and there are no other actors except for these trusted bridges such as social actors or centers for social work. Or we're trying, some of the partners are even looking into conducting one-on-one interviews with the energy people affected by energy poverty, so that we could get their problems, their concerns, and so on.
Great, thank you. And Julie, I think I unmuted you. You can also ask a question. You have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much, Lydia. It's very nice to see you this way. I'm Zsuzsanna Korita from Habitat for Humanity Hungary. And thank you very much for this presentation, because we also work with these vulnerable households and energy poor households, and we have really extensive experience in working with them, and also we do face these challenges that you specifically mentioned that in your last slides. And I was wondering, maybe you said that, but I missed it, how long this project will last, because my question is, how will you address these challenges, and will you be looking for answers how to overcome these barriers and challenges, and how to implement it, and how to look at them from a systems perspective, and how to integrate it within like policies and support programs, maybe, that because our experience is that you can have the best financial subsidy programs addressed to energy poor households. These kinds of barriers, like distrust of actors and administrative problems they are facing, they will always be a very serious barrier to even apply for these support programs. So the question is, will you look for the answers to tackle these barriers?
Yeah, thank you, Gigi, for the question. Yes, of course, we're trying to find answers and solutions to these barriers. We already have some ideas, but we're at the moment at the process of trying to accumulate more ideas on how to tackle these problems. Of course, each pilot area is facing a different set of situations. So we're also going to tailor the answers to the pilot areas, but what we're trying to do on the project level is that we have this regular meeting with the consortium, with the piloting partners, where we try to exchange our experiences, our ideas, our answers to the problems. So the solutions should be part of our roadmaps, which should appear at least in the first draft in September this year. And after September this year until October 25, so October next year, we have a little bit over a year to try to implement some of the measures from the roadmaps. We would like to actually implement some of the measures in practice, at least the ones that are implementable within the last year of the project. We're already also actively looking for financing of these measures. Of course, these financial mechanisms are dependent on the pilot area. For example, in Slovenia, we're looking into the support of the Eco Fund, which is tailored specifically for people affected by energy poverty, as they're giving 100% subsidy for the deep renovation measures. So we're going to try to involve the households where we did the audit so that they would actually implement these measures as much as possible in the duration of the project. And as for the policies, we have some activities in the project dedicated to compiling policy recommendations, which will arise from our experience in the pilot areas. And then we're also planning to advocate for these policy recommendations, be it on the level of the local and regional decision makers, being on the level of the national decision makers, and then even at the level of the EU decision makers, because very often from the European Commission, we hear that they don't have enough inputs from the practical situations, and we will have a lot of experience from the practical situations. So we hope to transfer this also to the European Commission and other EU actors.
Great. Thank you, Lydia. And then last but not least, also Nicola Stancia for Funding for Future. Please, would you like to share your screen and present the final presentation on Green Home and the Citizens Roadmap?
Hi.
Hi, Nicholas. Where are you? I don't see you yet.
I'm there. I see myself. I think I fell back in the participants box.
Ah.
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
would you like to make Nicholas speaker, please?
Yeah, she did it. Yes.
Ah,
you
great.
see?
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry. My connection has not been the very best quality today, unfortunately. And now can I share the screen? Here we go. Écran. Of course, it's not showing now. For some reason, I cannot. Here we go. I'm going to do it this way. I will not be able to see you, but you should be able. Do you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay.
If you like, I can also share screen.
Yes, should I share my screen for you?
I think it would be great, Roberta.
It would be great. It's quite fast, so I'll just say thank you. My apologies.
Okay. No worries.
Thank you.
Let's start. Anyway, first of all, thank you very much, Chrissy, for this. I've really, I'm really excited because I hear so many things that we all agree on. And I want to pick up on what everybody has said and Lydia has said again last, which is we really need to get these points that we all agree on. We have to get them to the Commission. We have to get them to the policymakers. And these kind of meetings that we're having, what worries me is that we are reflecting to one another what we already know in many ways, which is why I called my presentation Follow the Money, because I think that until we manage to change the business model of the companies and the vision of our policymakers so that they take a long-term lead and not these short-term, what's the next DG Regio program that I can take advantage of, we will not have the renovation rates that we need. And I think that one way that this can happen is by following the money, but I still don't see my presentation, Roberta, or am I just the only one who doesn't?
It's there. We can see it.
Yeah. I don't see it for some reason. Oh, I'm blind. What is going on here? Hold on. What do I have to click on? Oh, wait a second.
Maybe take a look at the view so you can change your view.
Yeah, I see. I just see you, Roberta. View, affichage, galerie. Let's see. No. Oh. Anybody can help me here? Because I really am blind.
Yes. I'm trying to solve it. Sorry for this.
Okay. So I'll make sort of my concluding remarks up front, which is that EPBD goes really a long way towards creating an environment that should help us to press both the owners, even though I'm frustrated that I don't think it can be voluntary. I think there are too many multifamily buildings which need help today. I also agree with Rutger that the passport should allow for a complete deep renovation, which may include other items than just the energy efficiency measures. And most of all, and why I say follow the money, this is real estate, and real estate has value. Energy efficiency measures don't have value to the eyes of a bank. What has value to a bank is that this apartment is worth more money. And what makes it worth more money is that it's a comprehensive and holistic approach. And this is where I agree the roadmaps can really help, because there can be a view of what will be presented to the owner. And the owner can really say, okay, this is my situation today. Where will I be in 20 years? And I still don't see my presentation. So maybe we'll skip my presentation.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, as we all see it, maybe you can follow it on your screen. And yes,
yeah.
and I will try to change accordingly, okay?
Roberta,
So-
if you go to Teams, if you go to the presentation, you say present in Teams, sometimes people are able to change the slides themselves. So maybe that could be a
Yeah,
solution.
it doesn't, I tried, it doesn't work. So maybe this is the best, yeah.
So the what I'm describing basically is this main problem, right? That we have a real issue in getting owners to make the decision. We have a real issue in getting to align all the stakeholders to work together. And so my point is that, and this is that sentence, very long sentence, but basically that a homeowners association, which is what we've been focusing on most, that they should have an integrated passport which has a focus on what it costs and what the monthly cost is, because that's how a housewife or a house person thinks. They have to say, okay, this month I have this much for the mortgage and I have this much for the renovation. And this way we can upfront start taking into account what is the financing, what is the subsidy, and how long can it be. And this is one of my key points as a financier. Real estate is for the long term. Therefore, we should be thinking long term. Next slide, please. That means I also have to change it. And so next slide, please. Let's EPBD recast. And here, really, what everybody has said, it really helps both owners and investors plan. My only problem with it, of course, is that it's a voluntary tool. Let's skip to the EED and financing. So on financing, everybody feels like the government's giving a handout by giving the support to homeowners, maybe even to the most disfavored among us. But it's not correct. These buildings are our basic infrastructure, just like we fix our roads. Climate issues are not a citizen. It's not an owner's issue. It's a citizen issue. It's a societal issue. So it's not a handout. It really is an investment in our own futures. And I think that has to change. People have to understand that this investment is a very important investment. And one of the issues we have today with the public funds is they've not been acting as a catalyst. Instead, they've been acting as a basically profit box. We have watched, and the Court of Auditors of the Parliament has seen it itself, that they are not efficient tools today. So we need to continue to push for an understanding of how the public funds can be used. An example, for instance, is where we combined in the case of the Sunshine Program, where we combined the fact that there was a grant element with a very strong private sector investment, because the private sector investment pushed for better quality. And actually, two buildings that were built, that were renovated at the same time, exactly the same buildings. One was done only with the standard renovation free money, 50% grant, and the other one was done in a combination with the money of the government and private investment. The result was this building cost 60,000 euros less than this one, for a total amount of almost 500,000. So how come? Same builder. Simply because this side was watching more carefully, because this side has more market power and understands better. And the way it works, and this is where we go down to LaBif, the example of a financial tool. where basically you have a contractual arrangement with a number of the stakeholders. And this is this idea of how to align the stakeholders. And if this idea of follow the money, and I won't walk through it completely, but you can look at it later. But it's quite simple. But if you align the stakeholders on the money, then everybody knows what they're going to get out of it. And the idea of the beef, which you see down in the middle, is that basically beef says these are the guidelines. This is we already have been using our equivalent of passport. As we say, you have to have these things done at this level of quality. Otherwise, you don't qualify. And only after you've done the work, and that's this little guy in the little man in the middle, after you've done the work, do we look at whether or not you've achieved this. If you have, we then pay the money to the company that did the work, and the owners reimburse us on bill. So just like they pay their electricity and their energy bill today. And this way, they are paying for much longer time because we give them a 20-year contract, and they've gotten better value for their grant. And here's an example, next slide, basically of what a bill would look like. You have your the cost for the water heating, the maintenance, the management fee, the renovation fee, and continuing to set money aside for the reserve fund. Which brings us to how to combine it, or do we combine, or do we do it all? We believe that, and I think when we look at what our colleagues have said today, we need better market research. We need very good data, and this is where the passport comes in and the logbook. We need to be able to have financial institutions who are ready to give commitments and indicate tenor interest rate, which if they have better data, they can do. And we need to combine all of this data, including what is the grant, what is the financing, what are the needs of that building, thanks to the passport, so that we can present to the owners, and at the very first meeting, a roadmap which actually says not just what it's going to work, what work will be done and when, but also what the savings and cost per month would be for them. And in this way, both owners will be happy, and if owners are happy, then investors will be more interested in investing, which today is not the case. There are very few private sector investors who are willing to invest in renovation. They're willing to invest in renewable, but not in energy efficiency. Thank you. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nicholas. And does somebody have some questions to Nicholas? To the beef? It's a little bit complex, but obviously everybody understood it. Yes, please. I forgot your name. I'm very sorry, but Fantasa. It's from the office of Fantasa.
Hi. This is Anna from Fanta.
Anna.
It's Anna.
And
Anna.
hi, nice to see you again. And I was just wondering if you consider the issue of under-consuming households in your financial schemes, because in many energy poor households, they are trying to reduce their energy use as they can, and therefore the measurement of actual energy of their energy consumption is really important. And also, I was wondering how much pay-as-you-save schemes can work in the context of quite serious self-restriction measures in the case of energy poor households, and if you have any practical insights on that, because I don't have much, like, I don't know if this issue has been ever measured and so on. Yeah.
In Eastern Europe, and especially in Latvia, for instance, at the price at what was energy a few years ago, when we first started, the underheating, we're talking, instead of being at 21, people were at 18 or maybe 17 even during the day. And so part of our guidelines include how do you normalize the baseline. And it's not just normalizing on the basis of the climate, but also on the basis of the actual temperature in the building, so that you end up on an average of 21.5 degrees, which we consider to be like an acceptable minimum. And as a result of that, that is what we have done for all the buildings, and in some cases it meant quite a big difference. In fact, of what is the actual consumption versus the normalized consumption, and that's across. I mean, and that's getting worse, I would say, if anything, and that is part of where somebody else was mentioning. I think it was Mrs. Andre. Mentioning about how the energy auditors of there's very different qualities of energy audits, and we really need to have standardization, both of the documentation and the standards that are used, as well as teaching people. I think in Germany, for instance, you can't not just everybody can say, oh well, I meet you have to be and here, Chrissy, you can tell me their name. I forget the name of the energy. There's only 70,000 energy. I don't know what they're called. Sorry. In Germany, you have a specific competence, and these men and women are trained. Yeah. Okay. You don't know, but yes, Germany has.
Do you mean Energieeffizienzexperten? You mean that?
I think there are about 70,000, maybe more now, that they have the competence to actually do assessments on energy.
Yes, exactly. They have to be credited by BAFA, by the official regulatory. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of our countries is a better regulatory and higher standards. So
Thanks.
yes, Anna.
Yes, Anna, that could be one of my favorite questions, underconsumption, the pre-bound effect. Very good that you asked it.
No, but here, one of the things people are missing completely is that the underconsumption is resulting in more people getting sick, less productivity, and literally the billions of money that are lost in the EU due to this. So this is where the government, again, has a responsibility. It has to decide, does it want to spend it on expensive medicine from Bayer, or does it want to spend it on keeping people healthy to begin with? So, and I think this is one thing that needs to be analyzed, and I've included in our calculation. More healthy people means better building, means people pay me. If you have people sick all the time, they won't be able to pay the bill.
Okay. Maybe a general question to also everybody would be, we've been discussing some add-ons and some additional elements that are necessary for the renovation roadmaps or building renovation passports. So what do you take home, or what would you include as well? I'm thinking here about including maybe the increase of the value of the property that could be showcased. Additionally, we have the social climate fund, which will be introduced soon, and the CO2 price that will be accounted also in the residential buildings, maybe that, and connected to that also the amortization of the measurement. What about maybe taking into account in the price that should be visible in the renovation roadmaps about the in homeowner associations, especially the reserves and the levies. So does somebody have other maybe elements that can be voluntarily included and that we can discuss here? Rutger.
Yeah, thanks for this good question. I think you already mentioned several important ones. One thing that I believe is optional, but that will become very important, is the impact of the materials that we use for the renovation. So the embodied carbon, we call this, and there is in the EPBD reference to including this in the EPC. So I think it also makes sense to include it in building renovation passports if governments really want to go ahead, because it will also allow you to calculate how quickly you can earn back your carbon investment in the materials by saving operational energy. I think that will be very useful for policymakers to actually achieve net zero building stock or close to zero energy building stock in 2050.
Thanks, yeah. Emily.
something not related to the IB Road TBC project, but that came to mind is this whole sufficiency idea, right? Like you spoke before about children maybe not being there and then anymore, so empty nest, parents renovate the house, and how do you maybe reduce space per person? Do you maybe renovate in a way that then allows another unit there where maybe a young family can move in or another old couple? So this idea of how, if you are also spoke about energy auditors, energy advisors, how can they not only in terms of the actual energy efficiency, but also the kind of the sufficiency. So the amount of space per person, but also all sorts of other like sharing facilities or whatever that could be. It's a bit less hard, like it's harder to quantify in a way, but the energy savings from that are of course extremely high. And so yeah.
Yes, very good point, actually. Add-ons, yes. And we also have some other questions also still in the chat that I don't want to miss out. So from Marco, for instance, which is the highest barrier to tackle energy poverty? It's the initial cost, running costs, non-energy related priorities. Lydia, maybe, or somebody else would like to answer that question. I think it's more of a general question.
Yeah, I can try. I mean, it's a difficult one to answer because I mean, one of the characteristics of energy poverty is that it's very situation specific. You can have, like in some case, that the non-energy priorities would be the major obstacle, in some cases not. But generally speaking, I would say that initial investment costs are the major barrier, because in a lot of situations the households are barely able to put aside the, let's say, I know, 30 or 50 euros which they need for paying their electricity bill per month, so they cannot save enough money to be able to make an investment for, let's say, facade or windows change or roof insulation and so on. So I think in this case, I mean, this would be the major obstacle. Of course, the non-energy obstacles are also quite important, because sometimes, like for example, just to illustrate it with the case of Slovenia, we have these subsidies. They're 100% subsidies for people who are affected by energy poverty. So they basically could get all the costs for the investments, but they're unable to understand the forms, the administrative forms that they have to fill in. So like, it's definitely not an energy issue, but it's like literacy issue, like the ability to get through the administrative processes and so on.
Great, thank you. Nicholas, would you like to add up something?
Yeah, I'd like to compliment what's just been said, because I think that's exactly right. It's not, I had 5 buildings in one town, small town in Latvia, between the municipality not having the competence to quickly work on the documentation, the owners not having it either. Then prices changed, and after literally 4 years of efforts, including support from the mayor, all those 5 none of those 5 buildings have been renovated. And which brings us to one other aspect, which is the not just the processing of grants, that's already an issue we all know about, but also the permit processing. The permit offices have no knowledge about energy efficiency or these kind of things. And I had the office of the architect of the city of Riga say to me, "You're going to be destroying historical buildings by putting insulation on the building." We're talking about buildings that are only about 40 years old, and they won't be. They're gonna look the same. It's just they're gonna be thicker. Well, that's not according to our, you know. So this is where I think that there can be some very big slowdowns in I would call them the management and processing issues, and it's a huge cost to companies, which is one reason companies don't want to get involved in renovations.
Yes, thank you. I'm also seeing another comment here in the chat, actually, from Alberto. As you have mentioned, certificates are different for each country. When is the plan to recalibrate them to create a single EPC that homogenizes those existing in various member countries? I think it will start from 2026 on. Please correct me if I'm wrong, right? I think from 2026. And making this terminology understandable and practical for citizens can be a real challenge. Yes, that's why I think in Greenhorn and also in Renovity, we try to make it the terminology as easy and as simple as possible by including those elements. And somebody has to, let's say, translate and explain what is actually the outcome of the EPCOR roadmap, building renovation passport. Correct?
Exactly.
Would you agree? Would you agree with me?
Yeah, that's the
I
reason.
think, and also on the other projects as well, Nicholas. Yes.
Yeah, that's the reason for to have a toolbox, something that already explains at a second level, and also the idea of how concrete can we make it for owners from the very beginning. Look, if we do these things, this is what it's going to cost you by month, not a total amount. Which, you know, 500,000, 1 million. What does that mean to me for a whole building? Oh, okay, it's going to be 50, 60, 70, 200 euros a month, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's breaking down per apartment and per square unit, right?
Yeah.
And we can still have another question. Maybe there is one that I forgot. Somebody wants to jump in also, it's possible, of course. And maybe one question to the EPBD. What do you think, what will be the most important aspect to the transposition? What do you think is the most challengeable and most important aspect for the national countries in the European Union? Rutger, maybe you, I don't know.
Thanks for this question. Well, I think there is a dual challenge between, on the one hand, ensuring the quality of different tools that we're implementing. I think we extensively discussed the importance of having building renovation passports that actually deliver on the results. I think there's one big elephant in the room, the performance gap. So often if we promise specific renovation savings, what happens when these savings are not being achieved? I think that's something, if we ensure good quality, we can make these tools a success. If we don't, there's a risk that we create a lot of expectations that are not being met, which of course would not enable us to achieve our goals in 2050. And in order to ensure quality, we need to do capacity building. So I think we need to really ensure there's capacity at local level to make sure that municipalities, energy experts can implement these measures.
Yes, very greatly said. Nicholas, you still have your...
Yes, I put it back up on
Yes.
to follow up on Rutger, because I think, as he says, there's an urgency. I think the main issue in energy efficiency is that we don't have a lobby. We're trying to build one. These, you know, our kinds of meetings, I think, help, but I think that we really need to have a stronger punch that's really transnational. And with that in mind, actually, we're creating something called EU Peers, which is going to be a community of practice, which you have heard about, of course, Chrissy. But I will put it in the chat. Please either go check it out. But really, we really need to have all 27 countries very strongly. I'm going to be speaking at the Heat and Power annual meeting in Rotterdam. They have so much money, so you can imagine why it is that district heating companies charge less VAT than we do for renovation in Latvia. The renovation is 21% of VAT, but your district heating costs you only 12%. So that means we have a 10% markup to catch up. Do you understand? I mean, because we don't have the lobby. So we really need to create an energy efficiency lobby that says, and that's where your program of all the things that still need to be changed in the rural areas, they're the same in the cities. So that's the kind of thing I really would like to see, Lydia, because I think we should use those and make that a common platform. These are the things that need to change, especially since we also have a housing crisis. We all agree. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Some last words? Something is unresolved? No? Okay.
Thanks a lot for hosting.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It was a very interesting round, very impressive. Thank you for all the results shared. And we will come back to you with the recording and also the presentations afterwards. Thank you, everybody, for these nice questions as well. And have a lovely day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.